Introduction. Big Fat-Man LXN-PAIN. The official database. Big Fat-Man LXN-PAIN is a story about revenge. It's a story about family. It's a story about power. It's a story about grief. But underneath all of that, there is an entire mythology. A mythology involving ancient warriors, angel clan history, demonic bloodlines, reincarnation, cosmic beings, the prime above all, the young half, the sword of Armageddon, and the conflict that stretches back tens of thousands of years. And all of that information has been collected and expanded in one place. The official Big Fat-Man LXN-PAIN database. The database doesn't just document the 16 chapters of LXN-PAIN. It asks questions. Who is Nick Jackson? Why is Nick so different from his main timeline counterpart? Who is Ivan? Why is Eisen connected to him? What exactly happened to the Angel Clan? Why did the Angel Clan become conquerors? What was the Angel Sentinel God War? Who was Enos? Why was the Sword of Armageddon created? Why does Abaddon want the young half? And perhaps most importantly, how does all of this eventually lead to Nick Jackson becoming the prime above all? Today, we're going through the database from beginning to end. This is the Big Fat-Man LXN-PAIN official database explained. Before we get into the mythology, we need to understand what makes LXN-PAIN different from the main Big Fat-Man continuity. LXN-PAIN is its own timeline. The database describes it as a 16-chapter story divided into 4 major arcs. Those arcs are the End of Brotherhood arc, the Forever Cult Destruction arc, the Hyperblade arc, and the True Avenger arc. The story follows Nick Jackson, but this isn't the same Nick Jackson we see elsewhere in the Big Fat-Man universe. The database describes LXN-PAIN Nick as more pessimistic, more ruthless, and less forgiving than his main continuity counterpart. His experiences have fundamentally changed him. But there is one person who brings out the more compassionate side of Nick. Zephyr. And that becomes extremely important, because Nick's relationship with Zephyr eventually becomes one of the central emotional foundations of the entire story. Nick's story also connects to something far larger than the Jackson family. Unknown to him for much of the story, Nick is connected to the yin half of the original prime above all. That means that while Nick believes he's fighting for his family and his future, his story is actually connected to the creation and destruction of the universe itself. Let's start with the protagonist, Nick Jackson. Nick is 18 by the later parts of the story, although he is 17 during the End of Brotherhood and Forever Cult Destruction arcs. He's the son of Troy Jackson and Ida Smith Jackson. He's Aaron Jackson's brother. He's connected to John Spring. His master is Seth. His mentor later becomes Kush. His partner is Zephyr, and his daughter is Lara. The database gives Nick several titles: the Hyper-Founder, the Last Jackson, Lightning Sovereign, the Starbreaker, Father of Hyperblade, and the one with the Hyper Eye. These titles reflect the different stages of Nick's development. At first, Nick is essentially a survivor. Then he becomes an Avenger, then a warrior, then a leader, then a protector, and finally, a cosmic being. The database describes 3 major psychological characteristics of Nick. First, moral absolutism. Nick sees corruption in very black and white terms. He has a strong sense of justice, but that also makes him impatient with diplomacy. Second, the protector archetype. Nick doesn't lead simply because he wants authority. He leads because he wants to protect his friends, Zephyr, Lara, innocent people, and the world that failed his family. And third, emotional honesty. Nick doesn't hide his anger. He doesn't hide his grief. He doesn't hide his love. And he doesn't hide his fear. That is an important reason why Nick remains human even while his powers eventually become almost incomprehensible. Nick's powers evolve alongside his character. His most recognizable ability is the Hyper Eye. The database attributes several abilities to it: future movement prediction, energy mapping, reading an opponent's psychology, enhanced perception, and increasingly advanced forms of combat analysis. Then we have Nick's lightning abilities. Red lightning represents raw destructive power. Black lightning focuses on gravitational and extremely heavy energy. Golden lightning emphasizes speed and precision. Eventually, Nick combines different lightning types into increasingly powerful attacks. One of his greatest techniques during this period is the Gravity Star attack, which combines the 3 lightning types and summons a collapsing star. But Nick's power doesn't come without consequences. He suffers from hyper illness. The condition is connected to Hyper Eye users. Nick eventually enters an extra-dimensional pressure realm containing gold dust that can cure the illness. The environment is extraordinarily dangerous. The database describes the realm as having roughly 500 times Earth's gravity, with Nick having only a very short amount of time to survive there. He obtains the gold dust and survives, and the experience permanently increases his power. This is important because Nick's progression isn't just new form, new form, new form. His abilities are repeatedly connected to his willingness to suffer for his goals. The first major arc is the End of Brotherhood arc, and at its center is Nick's relationship with Eren. Eren isn't just another villain. He's Nick's brother. Eren's actions destroy Nick's family and eventually lead to the creation of the Forever Cult. Eren's philosophy revolves around the idea that peace can be created through control. He believes the world needs order. Nick eventually comes to reject that philosophy. This is important because Eren becomes a kind of ideological predecessor to Abaddon. Both want peace, but they have radically different ideas about what peace actually means. Eren believes people need to be controlled. Abaddon eventually believes reality itself needs to be replaced. Nick's philosophy develops in the opposite direction. He wants to create a future where people can actually live. The confrontation between Nick and Eren therefore isn't simply a fight between brothers. It's a fight between two different definitions of peace. Nick eventually defeats Eren, but his victory doesn't bring his story to an end. Instead, it creates the next stage. The Forever Cult, .. 1630 to 2030. The Forever Cult Destruction Arc. Transition. Narrator. The second major arc is the Forever Cult Destruction Arc. This is where Nick becomes considerably more ruthless. Kush becomes his mentor. Nick trains. He develops his lightning abilities. And he begins hunting down the remaining members of the Forever Cult. The database specifically discusses how ruthless Nick becomes during this period. His actions are driven by his hatred of the organization responsible for continuing Eren's legacy. Nick's journey eventually leads him toward Andros. Andros represents a major escalation because of his abilities and his connection to the Ultra Ever Eye. Nick's fight with Andros pushes him to the limits. And after defeating him, Nick obtains access to the Forever Eye's power. This leads to one of the most important moments in the entire series. Zephyr's revival. For Nick, this isn't simply a new ability. It's the return of someone he loves. And that changes his motivation. Nick isn't simply fighting because he hates the Forever Cult anymore. He now has something to protect. A future, a relationship, and eventually, a child. .. 2030 to 2430. The Hyperblade arc. Music becomes more hopeful. Narrator. 3 months after the destruction of the Forever Cult, Nick begins looking beyond revenge. He sees corruption across the world. And he realizes something. Destroying villains isn't enough. If the systems that create corruption remain, another villain will eventually appear. So Nick creates something new. Hyperblade. Hyperblade becomes more than a military organization. The database gives it an extensive structure. At the top is Nick. Below him are the three pillars: Alistair, Kush, John Spring. Then comes the Zenith Council. Below that are division commanders and elite units. The organization includes the Hyper Vanguard, the Purification Corps, the Guardian Battalion, and then civilian branches such as Hyper Healers, Reconstruction Engineers, Diplomatic Liaisons, and Intelligence Scouts. This is where Nick's character development becomes especially interesting. He isn't just a fighter anymore. He's trying to become a leader. Hyperblade exists to overthrow corruption, protect civilians, rebuild damaged areas, and create stability. And Nick's motivation becomes even more personal when Zephyr tells him that they are expecting their daughter, Lara. Now Nick isn't just building a better world for himself. He's trying to build one for his child. That changes everything. .. 2430-27 to 30. The meaning of Hyperblade. Narrator. Hyperblade also represents a major turning point in Nick's philosophy. Earlier Nick asks, how do I defeat the people who hurt me? ... Hyperblade asks, how do I prevent this from happening again? ... That's a completely question. And it makes Nick more interesting. The database describes him as a protector who wants to protect the people around him in the world that failed his family. Nick eventually defeats Ortiz, the so-called god of evolution, using his combined lightning abilities and the gravity star attack. Hyperblade succeeds. Nick returns to Zephyr. For a brief moment, his life seems to be going exactly where he wants it to go. He has survived the Forever Cult. He has built a peaceful movement. He's going to become a father. And then, the story changes direction. Because while Nick is building his future, the ancient history of the Angel Clan is coming back. Now we reach one of the deepest sections of the database. The mythology of the Angel Clan. The Angel Clan's history stretches back thousands of years. And its story is inseparable from one of the most important beings in the entire database. The Prime above all. The database describes an ancient event involving Orion, a former Angel Clan leader. Orion became corrupted and attempted to return the universe to nothingness. He fought against Eros and the Prime above all. Orion was ultimately defeated, but the Prime above all sacrificed itself in the process. The Prime split into two halves, Yin and Yang. The Angel Clan was entrusted with the Yang half, and this created an enormous problem. The power corrupted them. The Angel Clan transformed from peaceful guardians into conquerors. For roughly 1,000 years, they conquered worlds. They conquered the peaceful immortal race of Seo, and their empire expanded. Eventually, Abaddon and the Sentinel gods demanded that the angels surrender the Yang half. The angels refused, and that refusal helped lead to the Angel-Sentinel God War. This is incredibly important, because the Angel Clan isn't simply a naturally evil civilization. They became corrupted by power, and that mirrors one of the central ideas of LXN-PAIN. Power itself isn't necessarily evil, but power can change the people who possess it. The Angel-Sentinel God War lasted approximately 5 years. The conflict began after negotiations over the Yang half failed. The Sentinel gods eventually liberated Seo, a world that the angels had conquered. The war expanded across planets and galaxies. The Angel Clan suffered enormous losses. The Sentinel gods became increasingly organized, and among the angels was a warrior who became legendary, Enos. Enos repeatedly fought against the Sentinel gods and their allies. He often fought alone. His closest friend was Elno. The database describes him as someone who could take on enormous numbers of enemies by himself. He eventually became one of the Angel Clan's greatest warriors. One of his greatest achievements occurred on the lava planet Nos. There, Enos faced Crom, Abaddon's right-hand general. Enos entered Dragon Merge form. Amriel joined him. Together, they defeated Crom. The battle became so destructive that Nos itself was destroyed. But Enos's greatest contribution wasn't defeating Crom. It was what happened afterward. As the war reached its final stages, Abaddon's forces pushed toward Alberix. Enos knew he was facing something he couldn't simply defeat through ordinary combat. So he created the Sword of Armageddon, a weapon powerful enough to destroy the universe. But Enos wasn't interested in simply destroying everything. He used the sword to seal away the Yang half. In the final battle, Enos fought Abaddon directly. He realized that Abaddon was overpowering him, so he made the ultimate sacrifice. He used the Sword of Armageddon to seal the Yang half. And he died, but Enos had one final hope, his unborn son, Aizen. The database explains that Enos received a vision of Aizen during the final battle. He believed his son would eventually wield the Sword of Armageddon and accomplish what he couldn't. The war ended. The Sentinel gods withdrew, and 20 years later, Aizen was born. This makes Enos one of the most tragic figures in the mythology. He never gets to meet his son, but his final act is done for his son. The database summarizes his legacy as that of a warrior who fought alone so his children wouldn't have to. What was Ivan? Ivan, the first warrior. But Enos isn't actually the oldest major warrior connected to Aizen. That honor belongs to Ivan. And Ivan is arguably one of the most important figures in the entire Angel Clan mythology. According to the database, Ivan lived more than 30,000 years ago. His original body no longer exists. His soul, however, continued. Ivan is described as the first warrior of the Angel Clan. He was born from an angel mother and a demonic
father. That made him a hybrid, and his hybrid nature became one of the most important parts of his story. The database explains that Ivan possessed mostly angel blood, but inherited demonic blood from his father. This unusual combination allowed him to access an ability that would eventually become legendary, the legendary Ultra White Angel form. But Ivan wasn't simply powerful. He became the foundation of an entire reincarnation tradition. The database says Ivan's soul became the eternal protector of the Angel Clan. Through reincarnation, his spirit could return in new bodies. Each new bearer inherited his potential, and eventually, that reincarnation became Aizen. The database calls Ivan the single most important figure in the history of the Angel Clan because he became the foundation of its reincarnation cycle and its legendary warrior tradition. Ivan's origins. The database goes even deeper into Ivan's history. It describes Ivan as existing before the modern universe. His earliest history takes place in a pre-universal era. He is associated with an ancient world called Etherian. He trains in the martial and spiritual arts of the ancient angels. He develops an unusually powerful connection with a dragon, and eventually, he creates the first Dragon Merge form. According to the database, Ivan's Dragon Merge produces a 200 times power increase, and his achievement becomes the template for later Angel Clan warriors. He becomes known as the first warrior. But his story isn't simply about strength. Ivan's life is also connected to the concept of reincarnation. The database's eternal spark doctrine describes an ancient consciousness that existed before the ordinary systems of souls. This spark could survive death and carry itself into new vessels. The Prime Above All eventually gave this spark a purpose: to become an anchor across the ages. Ivan became the first major manifestation of that cycle. His original body died, but his soul continued, and eventually, it became Ison. Ivan and Ison. This makes Ison's story much more interesting. Ison isn't simply a talented angel. He is carrying the soul line of one of the most important warriors in history. But Ivan and Ison aren't identical. The database describes an important contrast. Ivan grew up in a world of instability, suspicion, and conflict. His mixed heritage made him an outsider. He had to prove himself. Ison, meanwhile, grows up knowing that he has a destiny. Ivan's power develops through survival and emotional trauma. Ison's development is more structured. Ivan is feared, respected, worshipped. Ison is respected, expected, pressured. So Ison inherits something Ivan never had: the expectation that he must live up to a legend. And then the story gives Ison his own defining tragedy. Iris dies. Ison experiences overwhelming grief. And that grief awakens the same legendary transformation Ivan once possessed. Legendary Ultra White Angel. Ison becomes the second person in history to awaken it. So the connection between Ivan and Ison isn't just biological. It's emotional. Ivan's legacy is being repeated through Ison, Arion and Abaddon. And now we arrive at the two forces that ultimately bring all of this mythology together: Arion and Abaddon. Arion is responsible for the ancient crisis that caused the Prime Above All to sacrifice itself. Thousands of years later, he returns seeking revenge. Abaddon, meanwhile, has his own philosophy. He believes the current universe is a failed reality. He wants to create the infinite Earthuan 2 dream escape, a perfect reality, a reality without suffering, a reality where death doesn't have the same meaning. And he offers Nick something incredibly tempting: a world where Nick could supposedly live peacefully with Zephyr and their daughter. But Nick refuses, because he understands something that Abaddon doesn't. A perfect world without freedom isn't truly a perfect world. Abaddon sees reality as something that needs to be fixed. Nick sees reality as something worth protecting even when it hurts. That ideological difference becomes the heart of the final battle. Nick versus Abaddon. And finally, Nick fights Abaddon. The battle goes far beyond Earth. They fight across dimensions, across planets, across galaxies, across the void between universes. Abaddon has dimensional defenses. Nick discovers that Abaddon is weakened without the Yang half. Both are burning through their life force, and Nick refuses to give Abaddon the energy he stole. Abaddon tries to convince Nick. He tells Nick that Zephyr's death was unintentional. He tells him reality itself caused the tragedy, and he offers Nick the possibility of living with Zephyr and Lara inside his dream escape. Nick refuses. Instead, Nick's hyper eyes evolve. A new Ultra Ever-Eye opens. His power becomes so immense that he splits Earthuan itself in half. The final battle reaches Beetlejuice. Nick uses white lightning and gravity manipulation. Abaddon attempts to use the remaining power to fuel the dream escape. The final collision destroys Beetlejuice. The remaining Yang energy enters Nick. And then, the truth is revealed. Nick is the reincarnation of the Yin half of the original Prime Above All. The Yang half has now joined with the Yin half, and Nick becomes something entirely new. The Prime Above All. His power becomes limitless. He reaches enlightenment. He transcends. He becomes the most powerful being in the story. But there is a terrible price. The universe has been destroyed. The dimensions are barren. The people in the towers are dead. Nick has lost everyone, and his victory has left him completely alone. The true meaning of the ending. And this is why the ending of LXN-PAIN is so important. Nick spent the entire story trying to protect people. He wanted revenge for his family. He wanted to destroy the Forever Cult. He created Hyperblade. He wanted to build a peaceful world. He wanted Zephyr. He wanted a future for Lara. And eventually, he receives the greatest power imaginable. But he receives it after losing the world he wanted to protect. The database identifies the central themes of the ending as revenge versus destiny, the unbearable weight of grief, the price of power, peace versus control, and the tragedy of salvation arriving too late. Nick eventually encounters Lara in the White Void. She represents the daughter he never got to meet in normal life. And for a brief moment, Nick isn't the Hyper-Founder. He isn't the last Jackson. He isn't the Starbreaker. He isn't the Prime above all. He's simply a father seeing his daughter. And then the story ends. Nick has infinite power, but he has nobody left to use it for. Why the database matters. And that's what makes the official LXN-PAIN database so important. Without the database, LXN-PAIN can look like a 16-chapter action story about Nick Jackson becoming incredibly powerful. But when you look at the mythology, you see something much larger. Nick's story connects to Eren. Eren connects to the Forever Cult. The Forever Cult leads Nick toward Hyperblade. Hyperblade gives Nick a future with Zephyr and Lara. The Angel Clan introduces the history of the Young Half. Enos connects that history to Ison. Ivan connects Ison to a reincarnation cycle stretching tens of thousands of years. Arion connects the Angel Clan to the Prime above all. Abaddon connects that ancient history to the final crisis. And Nick becomes the point where all of these stories converge. The database isn't simply documenting characters. It's documenting connections. Outro. Nick Jackson's journey begins with a boy who has lost his family. It becomes the story of an Avenger, then a warrior, then a leader, then a protector, and finally, the story of the being who transcends the universe itself. But the deeper mythology reveals that Nick's destiny was never isolated. It was connected to the Prime above all, connected to the Angel Clan, connected to Ivan, connected to Ison, connected to Enos, connected to Arion, connected to Abaddon, and connected to thousands of years of history. Ivan's legacy survives through Ison. Enos' sacrifice creates a future for his son. The Angel Clan's corruption demonstrates the danger of absolute power. Abaddon's dream escape demonstrates the danger of forced perfection. And Nick's ending demonstrates something even more tragic. Sometimes getting everything you ever wanted can come after you've already lost the reason you wanted it. That is the world of Big Fat-Man LXN-PAIN. 16 chapters, for major arcs, thousands of years of mythology, and an entire database dedicated to explaining it. This has been Big Fat-Man LXN-PAIN, the official database, everything explained. The story may be over, but the lore continues.